You're listening to the official Reformed Stoic Podcast, covering politics, philosophy, theology, conspiracy theories. I'm ready to get to the bottom of this life. Are you? Join Wolfgang, Sketty Squad, Purity Gang, as we strive to take dominion over this dying planet. I am Reformed Stoic, and this is my podcast. Let's go. Let's get it. How we doing? Mic check, mic check. What up, my fellow Americans, my fellow people of the world? Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, how are we doing today? How are we doing? How are we doing? Whoo! Alright, I'm getting in it. I'm getting in the spirit. I broke down and bought some cigs today. 3 cigs deep. Didn't feel so great. I was a little bit lightheaded. I had a hot dog, got my drink, took some Tums. We're ready to sco. We're ready to skid it, sco. All right, my friends. How's everybody doing today? Beautiful sunny day here in my hometown. Got a few things done. I want to be mindful of my energy, make sure I have optimal energy levels when it comes time to podcast. I had 2 caffeine drinks a little bit earlier today, but we're hanging in there. All right, my friends. Let me get all my stuffs pulled up here while everybody's rolling in. So, for the show today, we are going to discuss food shortages. I got a couple of things for us to watch, an article to look over. We're going to go over decline in university male enrollment. Got a couple of sources to look out for there. And that's going to conclude the news segment today. We'll see how long everything takes. I want to go a little bit deeper on those topics. Then, for our theology section, we're going to go over Soteriology. I got a couple of unique perspectives on that. When it comes to theology, maybe some people will think it's interesting, like what sources I choose. I'm not necessarily going to choose sources that I agree with, or I'm just gonna pick videos that inspire discussion. And then finally, we're going to pick up from where we left off on that black pill article the other day. Rockstar Pure Zero is all you need. Yeah, I woke up and drank half of my coffee, did some stuff, and then I bought a Red Bull with my cigs, drank that, finished my coffee. I should probably wait till closer to the stream to hit that second caffeine drink, but we gonna be alright. As far as things like cameras and microphones, I'm gonna want to do some tests before I get that going, but I think it would be nice to get my microphone going someday soon here. HD camera, little this and that. Alright, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, let's go ahead and get into the news segment. Boom. How's that looking? Mic check, mic check. Volume's good. We're hoodie. Alright, I got the chat over here so I can see your chat. Y'all would probably just want to pay attention to the regular chat. Let's go. Rising social unrest over energy, food shortages. Over energy, food shortages threatens global stability. Rising social unrest over energy. Food shortages threatens global stability. All right, that makes sense. The nation of Sri Lanka has an almost perfect ESG rating of 98.1 on a scale of 100, according to worldeconomics.com. But the government, which had forced the nation to achieve that virtue signaling target in recent years, collapsed over the weekend because it led the country into self-declared bankruptcy, leaving it unable to purchase adequate supplies of fuel and feed its population. Thousands of angry Sri Lankans stormed the presidential residence on Saturday, forcing President Gotabaya Rajapaksa to step down and reportedly flee the country. Do they got the date here? Okay, this is July 10th, 2022. So this article is just from yesterday. President Gotabaya of Sri Lanka agreed to step down after what appeared to be one of the largest protests yet, following months of demonstrations fueled by the nation's economic crisis. Real podcast. Probably pretty small for you guys. Ha! Get sprayed! Dang. Yo, they spraying these fools. Why they gotta do my mans like that? The chaos. Should current trends in global energy supplies continue, Sri Lanka could end up being just a harbinger of larger things to come around the rest of the world in the months and years ahead. Somewhat ironically, an analysis of the full ESG rankings linked above shows that many of the nations with the highest scores are developing nations with the highest degrees of famine risk. Haiti, as an example, has an ESG score of 99, while the well-fed United States stands far down the list at just over 58. People worry most about the immediate crisis. Frans Timmermans, vice president of the European Commission, seems to understand the reality his own continent faces should it be left without adequate energy supplies this coming winter. Last week, Timmermans urged EU and national leaders to make efforts to beef up their fossil fuel energy supplies and delivery systems in the near term in order to try to head off disaster. If our society descends into very, very strong conflict and strife because there is no energy, we're certainly not going to make our climate goals, he said, adding, "We need to make sure people are not in the cold in the coming winter." It's playing out like Final Fantasy VI story. Interesting. I'll have to think about that. Wisely, Timmermans noted further that a failure by European leadership to adequately address a looming winter energy crisis could create such a high level of social and economic disruption that it could cripple the continent's longer-term efforts to meet climate goals. I've been in politics long enough, over 30 years, to understand that people worry most about the immediate crisis and not about the long-term crisis. And if we don't address the immediate crisis, we will certainly be off track with the long-term crisis. Oh my gosh, the climate, Macau farts, the ozone, it's melting, I'm melting, we're all gonna die of sunburns when the ozone melts away. Actually, we probably should focus on, I don't know, running out of food and supplies and society erupting into chaos. Let's focus on that, just for now. We'll worry about my ozone layer again when everything's okie dokie hunky dory. It remains an open question whether U.S. President Joe Biden, riding with Biden, and his advisors also understand the risks posed to their own political futures by rising energy costs and likelihoods of power and supply disruptions. In an extraordinary pre-trip OPED published in Sunday's Washington Post, Biden somehow manages to write roughly 700 words about his pending trip to Saudi Arabia without including the word oil, even though no one doubts that a principal motivation behind this trip is to ask Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman to produce more crude in an effort to resupply an undersupplied global market. Oil. The president does make one single sentence implicit reference to Middle Eastern oil, stating its energy resources are vital for mitigating the impact on global supplies of Russia's war in Ukraine. I imagine you need oil for wars. Let's go. That is accurate, but let's be clear on this point. The current biggest producer of oil on the planet is not Saudi Arabia, but the United States of America. This has been the case for several years now, yet we never hear anyone in this administration making any similar statements about how crucial the U.S. industry is to the maintenance of global oil supplies and the international stability plentiful oil supplies create and sustain. The level of international stability has begun to crumble over the past year in large part due to the emergence of a chronically undersupplied international crude market. That is partially due to several factors, including impacts of the COVID pandemic, Russia's war on Ukraine, the diminishing capacity levels within the OPEC plus cartel, and the growing energy crisis in Europe that began to germinate last summer. But another key reason why that is happening is due to the fact that, despite its ranking as the #1 supplier in the world, the U.S. industry is still about 1 million barrels of oil per day short of the highs achieved during 2018 and 2019. That is in large part thanks to the continuing efforts by the Biden administration to suppress the U.S. domestic industry, and by the efforts of the ESG investor community to deny it access to capital. You know, Alaska's got some of that crude. Let's give it up for Alaska. Last frontier, baby. Alaska. Marching to the brink of starvation. This increasing level of instability resulting from rising fuel shortages, supply chain disruptions, and the rapidly escalating prices that inevitably result are now creating food shortages that have placed hundreds of millions of individuals in developing nations around the world under a very real threat of starvation. The head of the United Nations World Food Program, David Beasley, admitted as much in a report last week. Beasley said that his agency's new analysis shows that a record 345 million acutely hungry people are marching to the brink of starvation. That amounts to a 25% increase from 276 million at the start of 2022, which was double the 135 million before the advent of the COVID pandemic in early 2020. There's a real danger it will climb even higher in the months ahead, he said. Even more worrying is that when this group is broken down, a staggering 50 million people in 45 countries are just one step away from famine. It should be noted that some of the food shortages are the result of governments placing a higher priority on achieving climate and ESG goals than on food production. Oh my gosh, this is like Greta Thunberg stuff. I don't care. You're killing the environment. You people are destroying my country. You're destroying our future. She's going to be like standing in front of all the food. Like, no, you can't eat. Let's save the environment. You did this. I don't care if you starve. Climate, dude. Yeah, we're going to have to smoke up the sky, man. Everybody's going to have to pull out their cigars and and dump a bunch of toxic gases into the sky like the good old days, baby. Bunch of men in suits smoking cigars, shaking hands, and just like pumping out fog of industry into the sky. That might be what it takes to feed everybody. Gosh darn it. Good morning. Let's not starve to death. All right. One cause of the collapse of the Sri Lankan government was its decision to force farmers to switch from chemical fertilizers, which use natural gas as a key feedstock, to organic fertilizers in April 2021. A mandate that predictably and dramatically reduced crop yields. By the time the Sri Lankan government realized the disaster it had created and attempted to reverse course in November 2021, it was too late. The Netherlands government, whose 90.7 ESG ratings ranks it in the lower third of European nations, showed a similar preference for ESG over food production last month, when it announced plans for dramatic cuts in emissions of nitrogen and ammonia that could force the closing of many farming operations. The resulting protests have been huge, and reminiscent of the truckers' protests that took place earlier this year in Canada. They have gained massive attention on social and traditional media platforms globally. Now, a lot of liberals, a lot of leftists, Democrats roll their eyes, a lot of atheists, they roll their eyes when people talk about climate change like there's some sort of a conspiracy behind it, like there's some sort of an agenda behind it. But now they're talking like people are focusing on their ESG ratings and their emissions. They're putting that first priority when there's a chance that we could be seeing food shortages. So it should be at least a little bit eye-opening to some of these people who have been really smug about protecting the environment for years. They have gained massive attention on social and traditional media platforms globally. In the Netherlands, thousands of farmers have blocked main highways in a protest over rising production costs and lower margins. Frustration, anger, even despair. All right, we're at the end here. Netherlands agricultural and horticultural organizations Weist Sonema told Sky News Australia that the proposals have caused a broad sense of frustration, anger, even despair among the nation's farmers. And imagine if you're a fifth-generation farmer living on your land, making a living, being part of a local community, and you see a map saying that basically there's no future. No future for farming, but also no future for the economic, social, cultural fabric of the countryside. Exactly so. What it all amounts to is that governments in all parts of the world are making choices designed to help meet their often arbitrary climate and ESG goals at the expense of feeding their populations and enabling citizens to keep their homes warm during the winter. Oddly, many of these political leaders seem genuinely surprised when such decisions and the damage they create cause social unrest that often ends with their being tossed out of office and even, as in Sri Lanka, run out of the country. If this current dynamic continues, expect to see government officials interested in remaining in office to begin dropping the maintenance of their national ESG ratings down their list of pressing priorities. Yeah, man. Survival, you know? The survival of humans takes priority over the survival of the environment, which, as many of us know, there's kind of just this totalitarian agenda behind climate change. Like, oh, do you have a license for that Hummer? Like, you have to, I remember people talking about this years and years and years ago, man. Like, there's going to be, like, environment tickets, and you're going to need licenses for certain kind of vehicles, and you're going to be fined if you don't buy all the environment-friendly stuff. And then there's just the fact that, you know, Trump was under all that heat for canceling that environment deal, I believe, with the EU or someone in Europe, and Yeah, I mean, we give them all of this money, they get all of this funding with the promise that they're going to do everything they can to combat climate change. But what it really amounts to, empirically, is that we give them a lot of money and there's still a climate problem, and all these Greta Thunbergs keep complaining, even though we're shelling out these millions or billions of dollars to do something about it. So, y'all know how it is. Podcasts all week, baby. Let's go. I'll tell you what, man. Maybe like the first day of smoking is rough, but yeah, I'm not really feeling the cigs as much as I thought I would. I'm gonna take it slow. So this is hot off the press, guys. This is from yesterday. Fresh news. Boom. Now we have a short video here. This is from July 1st, so this is about 10 days ago.
And labor shortages, extreme weather, shipping delays, supply chain disruptions weighing on people across the country. Take baby formula as a recent example. Mishaps in the chain can lead to nationwide shortages on some of the most basic items that we all need. So, what else could be next? CNBC's Andrea Day reports on America's supply chain pain.
Our shelves where tampons used to be, it's currently bare.
Dana Marlowe founded a nonprofit that donates menstrual products to women in need. She says,
yeah, that's good commentary from Esoteric. It's like, just buy the new economic friendly farm equipment. It's like, we're trying to make a profit. We're trying to run a business, and we don't really want to shell out all these millions for your brand new economic friendly equipment. That's going to make you money. Oh, well, that's just how it is. We got to make money because of the environment, and you got to lose money because of the environment. And oh, shucks, that's just the way it is. Yeah.
Tampon donations coming into her warehouse have been dwindling since January.
I thought maybe that's just a fluke, but it's continued pretty steadily.
Down 50% versus last year. And it's not just Dana's warehouse that's low on tampons. Check out these empty store shelves across the country.
I mean, to have a global supply chain issue on tampons that is affecting women is really like the last straw of the past couple.
Obviously, I'm thinking of all kinds of like funny, gross things to say right now, but I'm going to hold off till the very end of the video. I'm going to really think about it.
Couple of years.
So what's behind it? Supply chain expert Anna Nagurney says it's a combination of labor issues and raw material shortages.
Cotton is an essential raw material for producing tampons. Supplying cotton have been challenged because of all sorts of extreme weather events.
Procter & Gamble, maker of Tampax tampons, calls the situation temporary, saying it's producing tampons 24/7 to meet the increased demand.
Periods don't stop for tampon shortages.
From tampons to sriracha, also in short supply. We told you about it last month. Hoi Fong Foods warning about a shortage of chili peppers.
Man, I haven't had sriracha in a long time. Oh, man, you get these like fancy, what are they, like andouille sausages or something, and grill them up and put sriracha on it. Man, that's some good stuff.
A main ingredient in the hot sauce.
We've had a major drought in Mexico, also in New Mexico and California. So that's affecting the supply.
The company tells us they're still working to resolve the issues.
The theaters are full again.
But as theaters fill up, one thing could be missing.
Demand for popcorn there is way up.
Jay Holbert's company produces popcorn seeds for farmers to grow.
We're in a hot, dry spell. If it continues to be hot and dry through the month of July, that will hurt production, and we could run into a grain shortage.
And Jay says before, if they ever ran out of popcorn, they just buy it from Argentina. But right now there's a shortage of shipping containers, plus Argentina's in the middle of a drought, so that all could turn into an issue.
Shepard Smith here. Thanks for watching CNBC.
Guys, I want to be mature here. It's like we want women to have their tampons, right? We don't want to be parting the Red Sea or anything. That's all I'll say. That's what I came up with. We don't want to be parting the Red Sea or nothing. We want women to have tampons. I remember hearing something about sriracha plants, like sriracha factories. I heard they had to change some of the ingredients in sriracha at one point. Because there was like problematic fumes coming from the plants. I heard that years and years and years ago, but it sure has been a long time since I've had sriracha. Woman, women, women, woman, woman, women. I think I'm alright. Comments? Damn, can't even grab some popcorn to see how this all ends. Yeah, popcorn shortages. That's kind of making me want popcorn. It reminds me of a Metalocalypse. They're going on a diet. And then when they're in the grocery store, they start panicking. And all of a sudden, they want all this food that they've never had before. It's like, what? I can't have bread? I need bread right now. Like, they freak out and get, like, a ton of bread. No, I have to have bread. It's like, I don't even usually eat popcorn. But it's like, I ran out of popcorn. My popcorn! Like, it's making me want popcorn. How is there increased demand for tampons? My yard-obsessed neighbor who even grows corn in his backyard is looking smarter every day. Corn makes the world go around, bro. A lot of stuff is made out of corn. I heard it was more than just the smell. I heard it was like breathing in this really spicy fume or something, or like it hurt people's eyes, or I don't know. It's been years since I heard about that. First half of the year was the worst for stocks since 1970. S&P 500 dropped by around 20%, just shy of the 1970 bear market record of 21%. The NASDAQ composite was down by 29.5%, the worst decline ever. The Dow Jones Industrial Average fell 15.3%, the worst since 1962. Hitting some rough numbers in the markets. Corn-fed. Lake Mead and Lake Powell probably won't last very long. My estimated, it'll probably last about a year and a half. You know what? Let's go ahead and on the fly. Lake Mead water level 2022. Let's see something short about this real quick. Just get a little something in here. 2 hours ago. Boom. Fresh update. Let's hit this real quick. On the fly.
The largest reservoir in the United States has shrunk to a record low due to a punishing drought and the demands of 40 million people in 7 states sucking the Colorado River dry. Climate change has exacerbated the mega drought in the United States West. The wildfire season has grown longer and more intense. Scorching temperatures have broken records, and lakes are drying up. Lake Mead National Recreation Area's receding waters have revealed the skeletal remains of 2 people, as well as countless desiccated fish and what has become a graveyard of forgotten and stranded watercraft. Beached houseboats, sailboats, and motorboats create a surreal scene in an otherwise rugged desert landscape. A buoy that once marked a no-boat zone now sits in the dirt, with not a drop of water in sight. Even a sunken World War II-era survey craft has emerged from the ebbing waters. This still water paradise for fishing, camping, and kayaking was not created by nature. The reservoir is now at less than 30% capacity. Since reaching a high water mark in 1983, its level has dropped 170 feet, leaving a bright white line of mineral deposits on the Brown Canyon walls that looms over passing motor boats as tall as a 15-story building. The majority of the boat ramps have been gated, and marina docks have been relocated to deeper waters. Inconceivably, a sign marking the water level in 2002 stands above a road that descends to boat slips in the distance. Dropping water levels have ramifications not only for cities that rely on future water supplies, but also for boaters who must navigate shallow waters and avoid islands and sandbars that lurk beneath the surface before emerging. The dried lake bottom has the appearance of shattered glass, with cracks expanding in the hot sun and mud fading from brown to beige. A small school of dead fish has been arranged in a circle, propped up on their tails.
Wait, what? A small circle of dead fish has been propped up? Okay. That's an interesting note to leave it on. This is one of those moments where Christians just kind of have to bust out the based yes meme. Where the Chad guy's just like, yes. It's like, so you're just saying that God is causing the climate to change? It's like, yeah. It's a very interesting dynamic where the world very well may be seeing rise in climate actions that are leading to food shortages and water shortages and problems. And, well, the Bible speaks on these things, you guys, so that's kind of a difficult discussion to get into right now. But, yeah, God can cause things to happen, so it's why it's good to be respectful to God and do what God says. But, of course, a lot of people don't take that into account. The real news is the water level in Meade and Powell. Aha. Lake Meade water levels dropping. Maybe it is failing because it was not God-made. Interesting. So what's the plan? Mother Nature makes no plans. If the drought continues long-term, the southwest U.S. will be toast. What's a home worth when it has no access to water? Wow. I mean, food shortages are just as scary, but that's a scary thing to think. Like, this is scary stuff, guys. Can you imagine just water dries out on a massive scale, and then everybody's just freaking out, trying to figure out how to deal with it, and yeah, that could be big problems. So, this is a video that is a little over a month old now. This is an older video, but I saw this being passed around 4chan. This guy I'm dooming. This is a total like boomer fear video. This boomer is about to this guy is probably over the top. A lot of people are saying that this guy is just like trying to scare people, but I figured this would be something good for us to watch. Let's get into it. We're probably going to get through the whole thing here unless we decide that it's really stupid. But I don't know, man. Like, I'm not really sure what to expect with this stuff. I'm kind of learning about it right now. More than I knew before.
Well, you're most welcome to today's Talk Friday, the 3rd of June. Now, the biggest health threat coming up in the next few months globally, or certainly one of the biggest health threats coming up globally, is going to be famine. There's going to be outright starvation, I'm afraid, in many parts of the world, and we'll be looking at some of the reasons for this. Now, we've been covering a lot of the pandemic on this channel for the last 2.5 years, and officially that's killed 6.3 million people. Now, the real number, of course, is higher. It's going to be 7 or 8 million, maybe even more than that, but the vast majority of those were in the much older age groups. Whereas in famine, typically it's children that die first. So there's a real threat to many, many millions of children at the moment. Now, wherever I got this data from, it's come from here. This is the Food and Agricultural Organization of the United Nations. Some pretty interesting stuff there. And also this report from the United Nations, lack of grain exports driving global hunger to famine levels. Now, I'm going to start off with a quiz for all the world leaders watching. And it's fairly straightforward. If you're not a world leader, if you are a world leader, you'll probably find it difficult. But here's...
One thing good to note is, like, when you're trying to figure out if somebody's sketchy or not, like, who's that bust? Who's that bust? Whenever somebody's got a bust on their shelf, it's like, who the hell is that? And then who is that too? It's too far away. I can't make it out. But yeah, I'm always keeping an eye out for what kind of statue busts people got, what kind of pictures people got around here. Look at this stuff. Like, oh, my genetics, my brain, my viruses. Like, that's already kind of sketchy. But not really. We'll give them a shot.
Is the quiz here. So we need to connect A to B to give C. So here we have A, which is the food. Here we have B, which is the hungry child. And here we have C, which is the child eating his meal. Now, this is from the David Werner book, Where There Is No Doctor. Free download there. Partly the thing that inspired me to make my books, which are there for also for free download.
And something to take into account, it's like, well, why would this guy be a Mason? And going into this, I knew this guy was a doomer about this all. And, scaring people, scaring the masses, putting people into shock, that in and of itself can cause something bad. Maybe it's not quite as bad as people are making it out to be, but the problem could become panic.
But so anyway, how we're going to get the food to the child to give the child his tea? Well, what we need to do is we need to add the food to the child, and that results in the child getting his tea. Pretty straightforward if you're not a world leader, but world leaders do seem to find this difficult. Now, if you found that a bit cynical, that was quite deliberate. Now, okay, it's never this simple. We know that people like the United Nations, Antonio Guterres and Antony Blinken are working really hard on this, for example. But we also know that many world leaders are apathetic about the well-being of their people. There's massive incompetence. There's a lot of aggression in world leadership. And of course, in many parts of the world, there's huge levels of corruption. So I'm quite happy to leave that first part of the video on. Now, some of the figures here are really quite surprising. Russia and Ukraine produce 30% of the world's wheat in the enormous fields we have over there. Ukraine provides food equivalent to 400 million people. This is massive and significant. The Middle East and Africa are going to be affected by food shortages first. Now, the situation had been getting worse even before the Russian war in Ukraine, even before that. Now, things weren't too bad 2017, 2016, but between 2018 and 2021, people in crisis situation facing acute food insecurity up 88%. It's now 139 million, and it's going to be 161 million pretty soon. These are huge numbers of people at risk of really quite overt malnutrition. Early February in Ukraine, they were exporting 4.5 million tons of food per month. There's now 20 million tons of food stockpiled in Ukraine that can't get out because of the war from the previous harvest. And this can't go through the war-torn countries in lorries, because even if each lorry had 10 million, even if each lorry had 10 tons, you can see that's 2 million lorries. These are just massive, massive amounts. Therefore, the food has to go out through the Black Sea ports. And as well as all that grain, Black Sea ports, 15% of global corn, 67% of global sunflower oil, and many other essential oils go out through that route, normally through the Black Sea. But of course, it's mined, and there's warships and all sorts of things stopping that at the moment. The UN Food and Agricultural Price Index, all-time high in March. It has gone down a bit now. There's business going on about this. There's profiteering. There's some food hoarding going on. All of these things that are really contributing towards the food insecurity for the world's poorest people, and indeed difficulty for people around the world with higher prices, but particularly the poorest people who can actually starve to death from this. Cereals and meat prices also record high because, of course, animals are often fed on cereals. Last year, Chicago's like the standard. Chicago wheat price is one of the world standards. Last year it was $674 a bushel. Now it's nearly double, $1,242 a bushel. Huge increase. Basically, food prices have gone up 30% on the year. And many poor people who are already struggling are simply going to go into avert hunger and malnutrition. United Nations, Antony Guterres, when war is raged, people go hungry. I'm afraid this is true. 60% of the undernourished people live in conflict areas. 60% of people in conflict areas. Now, there's other problems. There's global climate change.
This guy probably slays, dude. I mean, he's a little aged out, but assuming he's not like really short, this guy was probably a Chad.
There's corruption, there's war, but conflict is the main one at the moment. 2021, 800 million undernourished people, 140 million suffering acute hunger, And the 10 countries where most of these 140 million lived, as we'll see, just go through the list, because unfortunately you'll know that most of these are associated.
Okay, here we go. I just want to see what books he's got here. Medicine, Pharmakia, Trader, Vitamins, Black Dog. Wait a second. Black Dog. Anubis, anybody? It's over. Pharmakia, Anubis, the Black Dog, Trader.
With conflicts of various sizes. Afghanistan, of course. Dear me. Democratic Republic of Congo, Ethiopia, Haiti, Nigeria, Pakistan, South Sudan, Syria, and of course Yemen. That was really quite a sophisticated country, as now in very, very severe food insecurity.
You know, I'll say this, guys, interjecting here. We've been going crisis after crisis for the last couple of years. I do feel like I'm observing this mass cope where everybody's reaction is, oh, it's a nothing burger, and oh man, just 2 weeks, and oh dude, nothing's gonna happen. I think people say that kind of stuff because you don't want to allow yourself to think that shit's about to hit the fan. And I don't really know one way or the other, but, you know, that sentiment has been pretty popular out there. Like, oh, you know, this guy's a doomer and this guy's a boomer just trying to, like, scare you. But I don't know, guys. Like, this talk has been pretty consistent for a while now. People have consistently talked about wheat shortages. People have consistently talked about the water issue in the Hoover Dam. Like, it's going down, dude. I'm not saying dooming it's going down, but I wouldn't write any of this stuff off.
So now the situation is 44 million people in 38 countries at emergency levels of hunger. This means they could potentially starve. Shortage of grain fertilizers caused by the war, warming temperatures, global changes, of course, the rain at the wrong time, all that kind of thing, and pandemic-driven supply, as well as the corruption and problems that are there all the time. So the pandemic has messed up supply problems. And something I didn't know until I looked into this, Russia produces the majority of the world's fertilizer, apparently. And of course, that's simply not being exported now. I mean, we're using too many fertilizers, but that's a separate issue. We do need if there's less fertilizers, the crops will be dramatically less in the next year all around the world. Again, Mr. Gutierrez saying, tips tens of millions of people into the edge of food insecurity, followed by malnutrition, mass hunger and famine in a crisis that could last for years. Not good at all. The complex security and economic economic and financial implications require goodwill on all sides for a deal to be reached. I'll let you see or give your opinion on how likely that goodwill is going to be to occur. And again, not a political comment, but it is the main exacerbating factor at the moment. And again, this is Antonio Gutierrez, who says this. Let's be clear, there is no effective solution to the food crisis without reintegrating Ukraine's food production, which isn't looking for too...
Dude, I wish I was a prepper. Like, yeah, preppers are kind of cheesy, but it sure just feel good to be like, oh man, I got so many beans. You guys want to see my pantry? Hey, who wants to see my pantry? Dude, you've already showed us your pantry. It's like, let's go look at the pantry. I need to show you, dude. I got another tub with like 100 big 5-pound jars of peanut butter in it. It would be nice.
Likely, Russia must permit safe and secure exports of grain stored in Ukrainian ports. And again, no indication that that's going to happen. Now, the Ukrainians do say they know where all the mines are that could affect the shipping. They could take them up pretty quickly. I'm not sure the Russians will know where all theirs are. They could just be lots of mines just floating around. So how this is going to be quickly resolved, if there was the political will there immediately, which we don't think there is. It's a difficult situation. and millions of people are going to suffer.
Yeah, you'd want to take into account, like, I mean, dude, if shit really hits the fan and people are, like, starving and scounging, and, dude, it's crazy to think about how ugly things could get, and that's where, like, having a bunker, like, having a hidden shelter with everything you need in there, wow. That's scary stuff to think about, bro. I'm trying to keep it positive around here. I'd like to think we're going to get through this, little buddies. We're going to make it. Maybe I should do a positivity mixtape. Like, let's not have food shortages. I'm hungry. I still got food. We all still got food. Let's keep eating, baby. We got water.
And again, Antonio Gutierrez says, Russian food and fertilizers must have full and unrestricted access to world markets. This needs to be separate from the conflict and the sanctions. World Food Programme head David Beasley agreeing with Anthony Blinken that they were talking together. The world is on fire. We have solutions. We need to act, and we need to act now. The problem is here now already. We can't wait on this one. And Anthony Blinken says this greatest global food security crisis of our time, as well as all the energy problems as well. I mean, everywhere you'll have noticed that petrol and electricity has gone up dramatically. All fuels have gone up dramatically. And of course, that affects fertilizer production, which needs quite a lot of energy to produce. And of course, farm equipment as well. Let's leave the last word on this to Mr. Gutierrez. There's enough food for everyone in the world. Let's underline that. There is enough food for everyone in the world. There is. But the issue is about distribution. In our world of plenty, I will never accept the death from hunger of a single child, woman or man. Neither should the members of this council, and yet people do die from malnutrition. And even the people...
We're about to come to the end of the news segment. I will take a minute to check the Discord, and I'll see what's going on.
People that don't die from malnutrition. There's all sorts of knock-on problems. There's this concept called the first...
Well, we're about to come to the end of this news segment. We're moving on to the next topic soon.
1,000 days of life that's so important. So that's from conception up into when children are 2 or 3. And food shortages then, when people are fetuses, before birth. And the first year to after birth, malnutrition then can have lifelong adverse effects. This can lead to obesity, hypertension, diabetes, heart disease, vascular disease. Liver disease is a big problem in malnutrition. And children that don't die, they can be stunted and have these lifelong problems and die prematurely, albeit 30 or 40 years later, as a result of the malnutrition they suffered as children. And of course, many will suffer acute complications and there will be deaths. So unfortunately, we did predict the pandemic back in January 2020. I'm not sure it changed very much. And now we're predicting mass starvation, especially in many children.
We'll take a minute to look at the telescope stuff at some point.
Let's hope that there is a window of opportunity. I'm not sure we're going to get the wheat flowing out of the Ukrainian ports anytime soon, but we have to look at every possible localized strategy to deal with this situation and just do whatever it takes and not have potentially several tens of millions of people dying from starvation in the next few months. Major health issue facing the planet at the moment. So there's the problem. Not sure I've given you many solutions, but that's the problem, and thank you for watching.
Most of the world's problems continue not because there isn't a solution, but because our leaders don't want them solved. Aha. 3 options you can consider for the UN role in this. They let it happen, incompetence. They let it happen on purpose. It suits one or more global agendas, so they'll roll with it. They made it happen on purpose. We need to reach a view on this to understand and decide how to act. This goes way, way beyond Ukraine. Yeah. Scary stuff to think about, guys. Okay, let me take a second to check the Discord. I want to be like delicate with opening new tabs and stuff. I feel like we had really great encoder performance last podcast, and that's because I kind of just stuck with the tabs that were open. Who are you even talking to, Sam? I don't even know what you're talking about, man. I have no idea what your deal is. It looks like all the messages were removed and he's gone. Oh, this guy? Alright, dude. I'm gonna kick him for you, bro. But I'm not gonna be messing around in the Discord on my podcast after this. So Sam is an F word, is getting banned. There you go, buddy. Don't say I didn't look out for you. Let's go. He's banned. There you go. Ball in. Okay. Let's be nice to each other in the Discord. Boom. Got some tampons. Let's go. Nah, dude, I don't want to play videos through Discord, man. I'm sorry. You can talk about the video in the comments and maybe I'll pull it up, but there's not that much room. Like, I want to pull up the telescope at some point, but I don't want to deviate from the plans too much. So, the enrollment crisis for men continues to worsen. March 16th, 2022, a few months ago, colleges and education leaders try to find solutions for recruiting and supporting male students, especially those who are already undeserved. So this website we're looking at is insightintodiversity.com. So we should get an interesting perspective here. In October 2021, researchers at the Brookings Institution declared that the gender gap in higher education has widened to the point of becoming a male college crisis, with many men lacking the support necessary to achieve a post-secondary degree. While women have outpaced men in college enrollment and completion rates for decades, oh, that's interesting to know. They just glance over that. Women have outpaced men in college enrollment and completion rates for decades. The pandemic appears to have worsened this disparity, especially for men of color and those from underserved backgrounds. That's what it says. And those of underserved backgrounds in both urban and rural areas. In fall 2021, the gender gap hit its peak, with men representing only 4 in 10 college students. Now, more advocates and education experts are joining in the call for an uprising. Joining in the call for policymakers to pay heed to this problem, as growing numbers of young men, primarily those who are already low income and disadvantaged, find themselves left behind academically and financially. So I think they're already trying to spin a narrative with that it's primarily those who are already low income and disadvantaged. I think it's just men, period. What we know for a fact is that it's men. 60% of attendees are women at this point. So numbers of men are dropping. They're throwing in this like, oh, they're low income and disadvantaged, but I'd be wary of the source there. We had a problem before the pandemic hit, but the pandemic has exacerbated problems profoundly. Donald Guy Generals, president of the Community College of Philadelphia, said during a national webinar on black male students hosted by the National Alliance of Community and Technical Colleges in July 2021. He listed finances, preparedness, and community support as 3 factors preventing this demographic from enrolling and finishing degree programs. Brookings researchers have stated that closing the gender gap in education will require interventions every step of the way, and many experts agree that better support must be provided for male students starting in early childhood. Some theories suggest the decline in underrepresented men begins in K through 12 education, as boys overall are more likely to be held back, drop out, and struggle with reading skills. By high school, young men across demographic groups tend to earn lower GPAs than young women in English, math, social sciences, and science, according to research by ACT Inc. In Florida, where the number of men in college decreased by more than 20% between the fall of 2019 and 2020 semesters, the state education department has taken official steps to better support male students. The state launched the task force on closing the achievement gap for boys to examine evidence-based strategies for improving literacy rates and more. The Florida College Access Network, a statewide organization hosted by the University of South Florida System and the Helios Education Foundation, have issued joint recommendations that include focusing on early literacy and providing boys with challenging college-level coursework. They also state that families need more and better information about planning for college and college costs, a step that is too often overlooked. This includes reaching out to ensure that more families know about the free application for federal student aid and can get help completing it. I definitely think that they're trying to miss the issue, but it's an issue that can't necessarily be observed from a study unless you offer a survey to a very large sample size of men, and that survey offers questions that are relevant to these kind of manosphere topics. I think, my take is that this stuff like, hypergamy and feminism being shoved down everybody's throat and a war on conservatives and a war on white men, I think that kind of stuff is definitely a factor in this, and it's not something that's going to be addressed. On a smaller scale, individual colleges, systems, and campuses have taken steps to address the issue. In November 2021, the Compton is the city I'm from. The Compton Community College District in California hired an inaugural director of Black and Males of Color Success. It sounds to me like they really want to make sure that black men are still going to university. What about everybody else? You want me to go to university? High five! Oh, they don't want to give me a high five. Oh, I'm being glared at by an army of black people. Cringe. The American Rescue Plan funded position is responsible for offering strategic direction and improving academic success, retention, and graduation rates, according to the school's website. While large colleges and universities have long hosted unique support programs for men of color, let's get it, men of color. I mean, I'm happy for men of color going to college, but does anybody want me to go back to college? Is there anything for like white Christian men under 6 foot? Adopting this focus at two-year institutions may be key to improving educational gender equity. These schools serve as the primary pathway into public institutions for male students of color. According to the Post-Secondary National Policy Institute, Black, Latinx, Native American, Pacific Islander men, basically everybody other than white people, are all more likely to attend community college. Let's go! Everybody except for me. Alright, well, I'll just keep not going then. I guess I'll just keep not going. Others see the problem as requiring intervention on a broader scale. In a September 2021 article, the USA Today editorial board called on the White House to recognize the urgency in the educational gender gap and what it means for the future of many young American men. The Department of Education under the Biden administration needs to launch the search for answers, the board wrote, and Congress should ensure potential remedies that emerge are put into practice. You don't want the answer, guys. And when you start beginning to look for solutions, it's actually part of the problem. Part of the problem is this woke, far left, racial politics kind of stuff. You know, like a lot of men are like, you know, I'm from an upper class neighborhood. My family's got some money. And I just want to go get a degree without women yelling in my face with a megaphone, blaming everything on me. You know, I don't really want to be in a classroom where I'm made to feel uncomfortable because I'm not poor or because I'm not a minority. And then you know, what kind of a response do I get? Oh my gosh, that's so racist. Eye rolling. Oh wow, typical white Christian male. Like, you're not entitled to be comfortable. It's like, okay, well then the problem's never going to get solved. The real discussion's never going to start because the real discussion's not allowed to start because these people, they don't want to solve the problem. I mean, this is ultimately what they want. So nobody wants the white Christian man unless he does your farming or landscaping. I think Scott Greer wrote a book, something like No Campus for White Men. Women being the majority of HR essentially makes them the gatekeepers of jobs. I mean, I don't want to make it sound like I'm approaching this from some sort of a white nationalist standpoint. It's just that the system is taking this direction where it's like, well, what about me as a white man? Yikes, dude. Like, why would you say that? Who says that? Who says, what about me as a white man? That sounds racist, dude. Are you a Nazi? You kind of sound like maybe you're a Nazi, bro. That's racist. It's just, there are a lot of white men who aren't going to college. Does anybody have a problem with that? Or, because, you know, I mean, they do take you know, surveys that they account for the racial percentages at schools. They can tell you like how the percentages have dropped for white male attendance, and it's not going to be brought up. They don't want to put focus on it. That's not their thing. So I feel like the white men who have stopped going to college, if anybody cares, like, they're probably gonna keep not going because the issue's not really being discussed. Not like the issue is all about race. It's actually more about gender relations, maybe. I don't necessarily know, but I can tell you why I stopped going. Ever notice that college or university people have way less kids? Yeah, I think I do notice that. Yeah, women are more agreeable. Jordan Peterson says that. I'm all for taking the male kids away from all single mothers and opening a Spartan program run by men to produce men. Let's go! Sounds pretty hoodie to me. All right, March 29th, 2022, couple of months old. Why young American men are opting out of college? Let's see if NBC can give us some perspective.
A lot of people are on autopilot. And it's like, okay, well, I finished high school. Time to go straight to college. They don't know exactly what they're getting themselves into. I was always skeptical, like in the back.
See, these guys are still going to college. Guys with like the weird artsy fartsy shit and the fancy hair, like these guys are still going to college. He looks like he fits right in.
Back of my mind, I don't want to be in debt for like the rest of my life because of some college degree.
See, they're not even asking like the real men. They're interviewing men who like, but I decided to go back to school. It's like, yeah, you're not interviewing like the people. You're not really touching on the men who stopped going. They don't want to deal with it. They like it.
What's up, everybody? Last scene for the day. We're downtown Red Wing.
Despite good grades and a small scholarship, 19-year-old Daniel Briles is forging his own path. He's not going to college.
I made the decision before the pandemic. I decided that I didn't need college for the things that I wanted to achieve in life, and I had all these aspirations and goals, and it was at that moment that I was like, I could do this by myself.
U.S. colleges have 1.7 million fewer students than they had 5 years ago, and the overwhelming...
Okay, so my prediction is that I think this is the only guy they're going to interview. They're doing a sample size of one. This one guy is going to explain why he's not going to university, and they're going to present that as like, this is a pretty good example of why men aren't going to university. No, if you interviewed somebody like me or anybody in chat, or what I truly believe to be a large, more accurate representation of men who are not going, they're going to bring up kind of red-pilled stuff. They're going to be like, you know, I'm just kind of tired of like people hating me because I don't vote Democrat, or I'm tired of learning about critical race theory and critical feminist theory and the gender spectrum. Like, I believe that is a more accurate example, just my take, of why men aren't going. But they're going to interview this guy who looks like he's in a freaking 90s Christian rock band, and he's going to just say, oh, you know, because it's a waste of money, or we'll see.
Majority of those lost students were men. And the numbers are even worse for Black and Native American men. On top of the fact that men only earn 40% of bachelor's degrees today.
I'm more of a kind of like, you know, pursue your dream type of guy, you know?
Yeah.
So like college, it wasn't my dream.
Yeah.
College is a huge investment of not only money, but your time. And time is something that's very important to me, and I do not want to waste it.
We're young enough to where we can do all this, like chase our dreams and make mistakes, you know? Because like, you don't have a lot of responsibility right now.
Yeah, there's plenty of opportunity, and we can learn how to bounce back from failure.
Most of the century and most of the previous century, education was not about making money. It was actually about learning things that we thought were important to know as a grown-up. The meaning of education has even shifted to very money-focused, particularly with a focus on STEM fields. Part of masculinity is being independent and not actually needing other people. They will choose a route that looks better for them, meaning immediately making money, rather than nurturing their intellect, nurturing their curiosity.
And that shift's led guys like Daniel to ask, if going to college is about making money and money can be made without it, then why bother?
All the things that I'm pursuing are real estate, which is the newest one, and then foreign exchange, cryptocurrency. I also started mining, and then music is also another huge thing in my life.
Yeah, see, this guy sounds like he's smart. Like, that's a lot of the stuff that you should do, dude. Like, Rich Piana, appealing to the real estate school of Rich Piana, he says, you need some fucking capital. You fuckers don't have any money. Like, it's good to have capital. If you have money to invest in real estate and in crypto, and you also know what you're doing, I mean, shit, the money that you'd spend on college, you could fucking invest it in real estate and get huge, dude.
Life that I've been trying to focus on. Anything else?
Do you want to get base ready? How far on the tater tots? We never put pressure on him for college. One of the reasons because of my experience with college. I ended up in one of those for-profit schools, and it ended up just being a lot of debt with no payoff.
Seeing that struggle at a young age, she was a teen mom, and like not succeeding in college because of all these different things that were kind of fighting against her, definitely was eye-opening.
We're totally fine with him like figuring out and exploring and what he wants to do in life, as long as...
Yeah, now is not a good time to buy real estate or crypto. I mean, this is kind of segue into like me fucking acting like I know a bunch of stuff about real estate and crypto. I've heard through the grapevine that there's some sort of like a bubble gonna pop pop, and then there's going to be, maybe the house prices will go down. I don't know, dude. I'm broke. Don't take financial advice from me.
He goes forward and achieves his dreams and really puts it out there and tries and stuff. None of us believe that.
I honestly think that Rich Piana's business advice is it paints you a really good picture. Like, he was in the prime boomer times, dude. He's like, I just fucking had some money, and I started day trading, and then I got more money. I feel like his story and his success is like a really good example of how times were just better. Times were just better. There was more room for people to get successful in real estate back then. So his story about it paints a pretty good, accurate picture, I think.
Like, college was like a rite of passage or anything like that.
It's like a lot of high risk, high reward things. And if for some reason all of those went, well, then I still have my full-time job and I'm perfectly comfortable with even just that. I do landscaping full time.
Studies show people with college degrees consistently earn more than people without them. But Daniel says he's fine with those odds.
Really, any decision at the end of the day is a risk. I think college would be taking a risk. I think any risk, as long as you're super confident and it fulfills you at the end of the day, I think is a great choice.
College is a huge risk. It's absolutely a huge risk. And, for me, going to a music school that I couldn't afford was a huge risk. And thus far, it hasn't really paid off. So, I mean, this guy, to me, he had good answers, but it's stuff that doesn't make waves, He's some good kid, seems to have a good family. And, yeah, he had good answers, It's like, it's a financial risk. What I'm doing is also a financial risk, but I think it's more likely to pay off. Even though, he might be, screwing his life up trying to get into real estate and crypto right now, so. Yeah, and my prediction was more or less proven true. They interviewed Daniel. We Daniel now, whoever the hell he is, dude. He's supposed to represent, he's speaking for all men who aren't going to school. A couple of people at his table were like, yeah, my time is important. But basically a couple of words from Daniel's friends and Daniel and, oh, that's why men aren't going to school anymore. It's Comments? Because when most people start looking at the cost versus payoff, unless you're going to be a lawyer, doctor, engineer, and specific business degrees, you could make just as much in a specific trade without being 30, 50K in debt. And now I wouldn't be surprised if somebody chimed in here, honestly, it's a terrible time to be a lawyer, or I'm an engineer and I can't find a job. Let's see. Example, Bill Gates. Correct, but that's an extreme example. I know many people who got a trade and has very little to no school debt, and they make 50 to 75K a year. All right, well, there wasn't that many comments, but you'll just hear people chime in from all over the internet. Somebody will be like, unless you're going to school for this, this, and this, and somebody's like, I went to law school, and I'm in debt, and I'm having a midlife crisis. People probably struggle with medical school kinds of things. There's struggles in all these individual fields, man. I've heard people say that business degrees, there's just complaints about every field, man, but engineer was supposed to be the safe bet. I hear a lot of people say they got engineering degrees and they're not getting where they want to get with it. So times are kind of just hard. A degree costs more than ever but has less impact on the job market. True. University is like the new high school. Everybody's encouraged to get a degree. There's nothing more important than going to college. Not everybody used to go to college, and now they're really pumping up the grants, Pell Grants, trying to help people who maybe couldn't afford college or wouldn't have gone to college in the past. It's making it less of a privileged thing. It's really a Marxist thing, bro. This idea that we should educate the masses. The idea that the educated masses should be an emphasis. And I don't necessarily disagree with that, but when you combine that with a society with a very diverse population that doesn't necessarily get along, well, I think that gets to an interesting discussion that maybe we don't have time for right now. Or that maybe I don't want to get into right now. That said, the ruling class prefers workers to be uneducated so they can pay them less. Yeah, I mean, the kind of education that I'd like everybody to get is not really the education that's being given. Antifa hype. Let's hear from Antifa. When I went to college, all my expenses were paid for with grant money. I went for 5 years. Then I needed a real job, so I went to a 2-year trade school and got hired right away. I didn't like the work, so I went to another 2-year trade school. I loved my new job and now have retired. I never had to pay for school. Thank you, Minnesota, for your school system. Huh, interesting. I had a very fun career as an aircraft mechanic. Got to travel and work with great people. It was really fun at air shows. I would flash my FAA ID card and walk right in. I'd just walk right in to the air show. Oh, you don't have an FAA ID card? Heh. Guess I'm cutting in front. Maybe next time. Beta. Young men are smart to realize they've been fed propaganda about the necessity of degrees and how you can't make a living wage without it. Yeah, see, this is one of the kind of people who I feel they don't want to talk to. Based Mark Garcia. Fact is, only 30% of the U.S. population have degrees, and only a tiny fraction work in the field they went to school for. Meaning a few things. 1, the majority of middle class already and currently have the industries that can support them. Going into debt for university when in reality a trade school makes more sense, or skipping debt altogether is beneficial. Skipping the stress of stupid classes for university improves the mental health of these young men whom probably would never graduate if they had went, on top of the fact that employers look at your job experience before they consider the education, because labor is going to be at a shortage for the next 30 years due to the boomers finally retiring. They make up 35% of the current workforce. You don't need college to be successful. My BA degree has done nothing for me. Can we find a red pillar in the comments? To be brutally honest, unless you're pursuing a medical degree, or law degree, both of which require 8 years, or an engineering degree, you are pretty much wasting your time and money attending a 4-year university. Damn. I spent 6 years in college getting a useless degree and racking up debt. It's not worth it. Yeah, they don't want to interview these kind of people either. They want to be very careful, because that right there is already red-pilled. Like, part of why it's a useless degree is because it's all of these critical studies, postmodernism, critical theory. Nowadays, you need a BA to be a manager at a Barnes & Noble for $20 an hour. Good luck paying off your student debt. Very true. School is kind of becoming outdated. There's enough info out there to get your own education. Actually, here we go. This guy's about to get checked. A lot of companies will train you on what you need to know anyway if you have the ambition. True. Okay. Tell your next boss you got your education on the internet. There we go. Don't need one unless you want one. Yeah, well, in the real world, most decent paying jobs involve some kind of education. Doesn't necessarily have to be university. Even if you want to start your own business, you better know that business better than your competitors. That means having an advanced education in it. You know, you can learn everything you need to know on YouTube for businesses if you're self-motivated and a competent individual. Alright. Ready to move on from here. So, For this last video, I had a lot of different sources to choose from. This is June 29th, a little under a month ago. Female professor explains why men are opting out of the dating game. Men are going their own way early. So this is kind of like, yeah, manosphere highlights. So the thumbnail on this video talked about men not going to university. So this is related to men not going to university, but it's kind of branching out into maybe the more dating, socio-sexual marketplace aspect. Here we go.
And then we've got this other group of people who do what I call opting out. Because, you know, you get to college, and here's what you figure out. Pretty soon after you get to a college or a university in the United States today, you figure out that the hookup scene is the dominant script. It's the thing that you have to join to really belong. And if you don't join it, you have to have a reason. And you have to give that reason. Because otherwise, you're standing in opposition to kind of the wave that everybody else is riding. It's a strange thing because people often ask me in talks, well, but hasn't this been going on for decades, you know? And I went to school, I always like to say, look, I went to school in the 80s when 80s music was not just a retro throwback, right? It was not just a great fun Halloween party, but people were, we called them one-night stands back then. People were involved in that culture. But you were sheepish about it when you told the story. When you talked to your friends about it, you were sheepish.
Women were more sheepish. Women were like, yeah, I don't want people to think that I'm, well, I don't want to risk saying stuff that gets me in trouble. But yeah, there was a little bit more social shaming. Like, oh, Susie slept with 5 different frat guys in a week. Maybe I'm developing a certain kind of opinion about Susie. And now it just seems like it's more socially acceptable.
You were a little ashamed. You were looking for their judgment. You were looking to see what they thought of you when you admitted it. Now, you have to feel sheepish if you're not participating in hookup culture. And that...
Women have to be in hookup culture. I had to sleep with Chad. I had no choice.
To me, signals the dominance of the script.
Look at that guy,
culture.
dude.
And that, to me, signals...
What's up? I'm having fun at college and you're not. You're not Chad. You're not welcome. Yeah, we're already hanging out with Chad. Thanks.
Signals the dominance of the script. It is the thing that is dominating the conversations.
Whee! I love college. Thanks, Daddy.
The mainstream social scene, and you have to work around it if you don't want to be part of it. So people who are doing something called opting out are...
I'm going my own way. This guy looks like such a beta. I guess I'm gonna leave. Okay, nobody cares, dude. Cool, dude. I guess we're just gonna keep partying and, like, hooking up with girls that don't even look at you. Peace out, brah.
Students, maybe like you, who are so busy, right? So I hear from students all the time who are opting out. I love these students. Oh, Professor Cronin, I know you want me to go on a date, but I'm just so busy. I'm just so busy with everything. I'm overloading with classes. I'm running 18 student groups. I'm going on an immersion trip. I'm learning 3 different languages. I've got an internship, and, you know, and I'm booking my friends for appointments in my planner, right? I'm just so busy. Or I can't find anybody who's interested. This is really disturbing to me because at Boston College we have 9,500 undergrads. And I'm usually saying to students, I don't know, you know.
We're drinking coffee. Dude, this is not a skill, bro. Like, you shouldn't be famous for this.
You're picking one gender you might be attracted to, like, you know, that's going to give you like 4,200, 4,500 students to choose from. And master's degree students, first-year master's degree students, not doctoral students, but first-year master's degree students might be available to you too. Thousands of students. You can't find somebody to be interested in? That's not for real. Because what opting out really is about is not about I'm too busy or I can't find anybody. It's about I'm retreating from this college culture. I'm retreating, and I am really...
I just imagine, like, Chad's in a Hummer with a bunch of girls in the back. It's like, hey, bro, can you get out of the road for a second, bro? Oh, dude, what are you doing? You camping by yourself? Damn, that sucks, bro. I didn't invite you, but you're a huge beta. Anyway, peace out.
I think I'm really concluding on a counsel of despair. Opting out is a counsel of despair.
I'm going my own way.
It is saying, I can find all those great
Dude, the way this guy walks is so beta. I'm leaving. He probably, like, died and starved in the desert and was never found.
things on this campus. Great ideas, great opportunities, great achievements, great ambitions, great friends, great conversations. But I can't find a great love. I can't find it. It's too hard. There's nothing here that tells me that that's going to happen. And everything out there...
And it's like, ooh, this is closer. This is closer to, you know, talking about what needs to be talked about. But still, what is she missing?
It looks a little too risky. A little too risky. A little too risky. A little too risky.
She's like, some people just can't, like, there's 285,000 or what was it? There's like thousands and thousands of people to choose from, and you can't find the right person. You can't find anybody interesting. But is that what's happening to the massive amounts? Gosh, I have so many women's phone numbers and they all want to hang out with me and sleep with me. I just can't find anybody who's interesting. Is that really the problem? They don't want to discuss it, dude. And then a lot of people will just say, most people aren't incels. Like, you're just a loser, and nobody talks about incels because nobody cares. And it's like, it's not happening to massive amounts of people. It's just happening to you because you're an incel. But then those same people will say that, you know, there's an epidemic of dangerous incel terrorists. It's like, the reality is, sweetie, that some men are short and weird looking and beta, and campus is a hell for them. It, like, every single day is like, wow, I'm surrounded by the most beautiful young women I'll ever be surrounded by in my entire life, and I'm failing every single day. Every single day is failure, and you look around and you see Chad making sweeties laugh, and you're just like, I'm failing. I am losing the genetic battle. I am failing to reproduce. My genetic hardwiring is telling me failure, over. I believe that's a big factor. Any Spurgs in the comments? Where are my Spurgs at? I went from being a U.S. Marine infantryman, a heavily male-dominated space, to being a PhD student at a university. A heavily female-dominated space. I'm sorry for picking my nose. Yes, there is a lack of men on campus. And why that's a good thing? No. When I was doing my bachelor's degree, there was an average about 2 to 3 women for every 1 man. While I was doing my master's degree, there was about 3 to 4 women for every 1 man. Now that I'm in the doctorate program, where there's about 4 to 5 women for every 1 man. As I went higher and higher in my education degree programs, I have noticed that there are lesser and less men. Women typically want an educated man, and there aren't enough men on campus. I've also noticed that as I climb my way into the PhD program, the men in my cohort become more and more feminine and woke. And here we go. Finally, somebody acknowledges it. We had to get to the more manosphere part of the discussion. Here's what I think nobody wants to talk about. They become more feminine and woke, while the women typically become more and more masculine and woke. Women typically want the traditional man, a masculine, strong provider, protector, and leaders. But these type of men that these women are attracted to don't want a modern feminist woman. These women in the PhD program are typically older, bitter, feminist, unmarried, having huge debt, and are unhappy with themselves. I have no debt, by the way. Chad. Many of the women on campus... He just threw that in there. I have no debt, by the way. Many of the women on campus get passed around. Ooh, man, I just, like... I can just, like, feel for, like, any leftist, SJW, feminist. whenever women read this kind of stuff, they freaking hate it. They hate when this guy says this. Many of the women on campus get passed around by the top 20% of men. No, incel, lies, fake news, not true, alt-right, Nazi. They hate it, dude. It's so easy to say, and it happens so quick. He just throws it in at the end of this pretty big paragraph. By the way, many of the women on campus are getting passed around by the top 20% of men. It hurts. And so many of these women become feminists and have contempt for men. Man, it feels good to say it. It triggers lefties and feminists, and it's true. It's a hard truth that's not being well received right now. I put my head down and I don't try to dispute with these feminists. I cannot be completely honest and open about my views because I don't want my grades and reputation being negatively affected. I don't want to be canceled or dismissed from the PhD program for telling the truth. I've talked to these people online, and I know many of them don't value logic and cherry pick their science, so there is no point in actually having a debate with someone who is unwilling to accept the possibility that they could be wrong. Man, this guy is just chatting it right now. Unfortunately, universities are no longer what it used to be. Bad ideas cannot be challenged without the fear of repercussion. Sharing a different opinion can cost me everything I've worked so hard for. It's a totally different environment from being in the U.S. Marine Corps, hoorah, where I was able to freely speak about anything, no matter how politically incorrect and controversial it was. Yeah, because a bunch of ripped chads are like throwing around hundreds of pounds of weight and speaking some real shit. It's like, oh, why are there no women here? It's like, oh, well, we're a bunch of chads working out and none of them can deadlift 4 plates. So it's like, oh, I guess we're excluding people. Well, you're just excluded because you can't deadlift 4 plates. So you're just not going to work out with us. And we're going to talk about some real shit that real chads who can deadlift 4 plates talk about. I did take a women's studies class as an elective during my undergraduate years because it was an easy A+ class. I truly did feel like the women's studies class was a gathering of bitter, pass-me-around women and beta male simps. Many of these women are the stereotypical feminist women. I'm not going to read that. You know what the typical feminist women are. While the males were stereotypically male feminist, feminine, in touch with his emotions, not physically fit, broke, desperate for female attention, and mostly like an incel. Mogged. Most of the women on campus are an unmarriageable woman, as most of them are sexually liberated, masculine, narcissists who overvalue themselves because of their career and degrees, have hatred for men, addicted to social media, and cannot hold a conversation in person, and are confused about their role as women while demanding a traditional type of man. 92 replies, dude. This probably triggered so many people, bro. There's going to be really triggered people in the comments, but you got to consider the source. Manosphere highlights. This comment would just absolutely inspire seething on so many other channels. I'm going to take a piss real quick. I'm going to need to get like a we'll be right back screen, but I'm just going to go take a piss. It's going to take like 10 seconds. Pee-pee! Alrighty, Roo, we are back. Back in black. How we doing in chat? Best advice if you want the degree and feel like you don't fit in, just put your head down and stick your studies and go full force. blow Chad out of the water with your hard work. Pull yourself up by the bootstraps, bucko. That's kind of like what my dad says. He's like, yeah, but aren't you just trying to focus on school? Like, it's not really about relationships. And I mean, now you have the means to take it online. I might be finishing my degree online. I feel like we're going to be podcasting it all summer, and by this time next month, I'll be a podcast Chad, and I very well might decide I don't want to go back to school, bro, because I might just think, hey, you know what, I'm doing other shit, but point is, you should be able to go to school online now entirely, and that's probably going to be the option if you're not, Chad. So, that concludes our news segment for today. And wow, let me tell you what, guys, we've already been streaming for an hour and a half. I kind of like picking two really interesting topics and spending a little bit more time on them. You know, I didn't think that much about abortions, but we'll play it by ear. Sometimes we'll cover a couple of topics, sometimes a couple more. Worry about relationships when you're graduated and making money. Well, there are guys who are just cleaning up in university, and you know, I mean, if you end up with a college-educated woman, she might have been hanging out with those guys before she started hanging out with you. You know what? I'm actually really excited to get to the religious segment today. Overall, guys, I feel like we got better content today. It is time to talk about soteriology. Soteriology, the way I remember this is like soter, saving. It's regarding salvation. So it starts with an S. Saving starts with an S. Soteri, saving. Let's go ahead and read this. The first time I heard the term soteriology, I thought it sounded like a boring doctorate thesis or a medical problem. I was watching a video lecture by the late theologian Dr. R.C. Sproul, speaking to a group of seminary students who already knew big words that end in ology, but since I wasn't one of them, I paused the video and looked the word up. And I'm just going to go ahead and say that kind of is the pattern in theology. It's like, oh, liturgy. When Jay Dyer's like, oh, the liturgy, well, we love the liturgy. And, you know, when in terms of like liturgy and liturgical practices, theology terms sound very big and scholarly, just like this person just said. But then, you know, you learn what liturgy is. It's like, oh, liturgy is just the service. You know, liturgy is like the tradition of the church service, but in like what happens during a church service is more or less the liturgy. Soteriology is more or less terms of salvation. So I probably wouldn't have brought it up unless this article brought it up, but some terms in theology will sound pretty big and intimidating, and they're not quite as scary when you learn about it. Anyway, moving on. What is the meaning of soteriology? The term comes from the Greek word soteria, which means salvation. Soteria derives from the root word soter, which means savior. Finally, the suffix ology comes from the Greek word logia, which means to study. Soteriology, therefore, is a branch of theology that focuses on the study of salvation. Every discipline has its own jargon. Absolutely, guys. I mean, just learn it. You'll get it. It's not scary to me because I'm a Chad. Is soteriology biblical? Soteriology isn't uniquely Christian, but it is biblical. Paul demonstrates the use of soteriology in his letter to the Corinthian church. He wrote the church after they'd fallen away from the truth of the gospel, the proclamation of the message of salvation. They'd embraced distorted teachings and practices concerning salvation. He addressed their false beliefs, corrected their understanding, and in 1 Corinthians 15, 1-5, defined a true salvation. Christ died for our sins. Christ was buried. Christ was raised on the third day. Christ appeared to many after his resurrection. These truths happened according to and in fulfillment of Scripture. Paul also demonstrated how the Corinthians could know they're saved. They heard the true gospel. They received the gospel as truth. They stood believing, evidenced by their life, upon the gospel as truth. 5 common questions soteriology answers. Soteriology answers many questions, such as the following 5 common and all-important questions. Who needs saving? All mankind. John 3:17, Romans 3:9 through 10 and 23. What do they need saving from? Sin, imputed sin. The sin born in us originating from Adam's sin recorded in Genesis 3. And actual sin, the sin we commit by our own choices. Who does the saving? Jesus Christ, the Son of God. How does the Savior save? Christ went to the cross and purchased the salvation of all who will believe in his atoning death. What is the chief end of salvation? The radiant glory of God and eternal enjoyment of his children. Christian soteriology digs deeply into the doctrine of salvation and examines the author of salvation, Jesus Christ. He's the beginning and end of all things. Thus, Christian soteriology calls for a clear understanding of another ology, Christology. What is the difference between Christology and soteriology? Soteriology, study of salvation. It guards against false understanding about salvation and helps ensure we know if we're truly saved from God's wrath for our sin. Christology is the study of the person and work of Jesus Christ, particularly Jesus' primary work, salvation. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and go to the first video. I've picked something very unique for you. It is old. This is an 11-year-old video. It is the Orthodox view of salvation. Let's go ahead and see what we got here.
Hi, my name is Steve Robinson, and many of you know me from my podcast, Our Life in Christ. And for over 10 years, I've been looking for a real succinct illustration of the difference between the Protestant view of salvation and the Orthodox view of salvation. And I'm stealing this from Father Anthony Carbo, and he knows it. So this is the gospel in shares. So the Protestant view of salvation goes something like this. In the beginning, God created man, and man had perfect fellowship with God. But then in the garden, man sinned, and he turned away from God. And then because God is so holy and righteous, he cannot look upon man any longer, because man is sinful. No matter what man does, no matter how hard man tries, no matter how righteous man is after he has sinned, God still cannot look upon him in his righteousness and holiness, because man is still sinful, and no amount of good works can repay God for the offense that man has given him. And so man is in a constant state of separation from God. But God, in his love for man, sends his Son, Jesus Christ, who becomes man and lives as we should have lived, in perfect communion and in sinlessness before God. And then at the end of his life, Jesus Christ is crucified. And when he's crucified, God does the unthinkable. He lays all of the sin of the human race on his Son. And when he does that, because he is holy and righteous, he turns his back on his own Son, and the Son experiences the fullness of the wrath of God against us in our stead. Now we sinners, if we believe that Jesus Christ has done this, if we believe that Jesus Christ has died for our sins, we too can now have this perfect fellowship with God once again. Because when God looks at us sinners, he no longer sees us, and he no longer sees our sin. He sees Jesus Christ and his blood. We are covered in the blood of the Lamb. We are, as Martin Luther said, snow-covered dung. Or as R.C. Sproul put it, Jesus Christ is now our asbestos suit against the white-hot wrath of God against sinners. But If the human being who is sinful does not believe in Jesus Christ and his righteousness and accept the righteousness of Christ in his stead, then, God cannot look upon it. And in the end, the sinner will be cast into hell in eternal separation from God, suffering the full punishment that he deserves in his sins because he has not accepted the sacrifice of Christ. And so, in a nutshell, that's the Protestant view of salvation.
Aha! So he says, in a nutshell, that's the Protestant view of salvation. So his whole example he just broke down was the Protestant view of salvation, which is part of why I chose this video, because I figured he would start with that and then he would go into the Orthodox view. So we're learning about lots of views right now. Let's get it.
The Orthodox view of salvation begins much the same way. In the beginning, God creates man in his image and in perfect communion with him. And then in the garden, man sins. And in his sin, man subjects all of creation and himself to futility, corruption, and death. But God, because God is life, and because he is love, cannot bear to see his creation subjected to futility and death. So God becomes man.
And by the way, I'll just throw in, my understanding is that with Augustinian penal substitution, which is largely the tradition of the Western Catholic Church, his first explanation is also the Catholic view of salvation. It's also the Augustinian view of salvation, penal substitution, Christ taking our place. So the Orthodox Church has its unique view away from the traditional Catholic Church and Protestants. Aha. I don't know about the timing. I might be a little bit behind real time, but yeah. Rick, your comment just popped up, so I hit it. I hit it, baby. I knew to say that.
And when the woman, in her brokenness and in her corruption, goes from relationship to relationship, seeking and thirsting after true love, God sits down beside her at the well, and he says, I am the water of life. I love you. And when the man uses his fellow countrymen for career and for money, and is ostracized and alienated from his own countrymen and outcast of his own people, God says, come down from the tree, I will eat with you. And when the woman is caught in adultery and is cast before God, God says, I do not condemn you. Go your way, sin no more. And when man experiences the corruption of the creation, futility of random illness, the death of innocence, and the despair of loneliness, God says, take up your pallet and walk. God says, Tabitha, arise. God says, go in peace. And when man, in fear and cowardice and envy and jealousy and greed and political ambition, take God and betray him and spit on him and beat him and crucify him, God says, I forgive you. And when man experiences the final separation and utter dissolution and separation from God and dies, God says, love is stronger than death. Even though you make your bed in Sheol, I am there. And God dies. But God says, I am life. And in the power of my life and in the power of my resurrection, all will be raised with me. And now, there is no place where God is not. There is no place to escape the love of God. There is no place that we can hide from God's love for us that flows from his heart like a river of fire. And God says, for those who love me, God says, for those who love me, my love is like light and warmth. But to those who hate me and close their eyes against my light, my love is like a consuming fire. And so, that's the Orthodox view of salvation. In a nutshell, it's not perfect, but that's how we view the love of God. In our Paschal hymn, we sing, Christ is risen from the dead, trampling down death by death, and to those in the tombs bestowing life. That's the core of the gospel of our salvation. So, thank you for watching the video. If you have any questions, you can Google me, and you'll know how to reach me. Thank you.
Wow, man. I gotta say, when you're trying to paint God in a very, when you're trying to emphasize his peacefulness and his lovingness over his wrath, I can see why Christus Victor salvation feels good to hold to. I've heard it described that, penal substitutionary atonement is cold, like Christ is just this blood sacrifice who was slaughtered in place of us. And, Christus Victor is like, it doesn't want to paint God in this way that he just needs this blood sacrifice in replace of us. Yeah, so more or less, that's the view. That's Orthodox has Christus Victor, which he just explained. And then both the traditional Catholic Church and Protestants have the substitutionary atonement. To deny Christ's passion, suffering, and abandonment is borderline Gnosticism. Yeah, well, that's definitely still the view that I subscribe to, penal substitutionary atonement. However, I'll just say lately, I'm putting more of an emphasis on learning all of the different positions. That's my emphasis more so than declaring which position I hold. I acknowledge that I think I've been a little bit more outspoken than I am educated in the past, and I've regretted it. So I'm really just hungry to learn, and I respect other positions. I feel like he sure made his position sound lovely, but yeah, I still hold to penal substitutionary atonement. So now, another interesting selection here. People are like, why are you bashing Protestants so much lately? Why do you keep picking sources that aren't Protestant? Or, it used to be WASP gang around here. I was in Southern Israelites Discord in his area, and everybody was Protestants. I just feel like I spent so much time Catholic bashing, like it's actually only fair to start hearing this other perspective. But, you know, even if I play perspectives that I disagree with, I still think there's a lot to learn from it. So we got answering the Calvinists' most popular argument. So this is going to be somebody attacking the Calvinist standpoint.
Have you ever been asked the question, why did you believe the gospel but your friend did not? Are you wiser, smarter, or more spiritual, or better trained, or more humble? This is one of the most popular questions used by Calvinists to convince others of their theological worldview. However, there are several theological and logical problems with this question. The Calvinist argument relies upon the logical fallacy of question begging because it presumes a deterministic answer is required. It's tantamount to asking, what determined the response of you and your friend? As if something or someone other than the responsible agent themselves made the determination. The question presumes determinism is true, and that libertarian free will is not, which is question begging. The cause of the choice is the chooser. Now, a friend may list influential factors in their decision-making process, but it doesn't mean that those influential factors somehow determined the agent to make a particular choice. Influential factors do not determine choices. People do. For example, your friend may say, I ate a piece of cake because it tastes so good. That, of course, does not mean that the taste determined the agent to choose to eat the cake, but only that that was a factor that the agent used in making their own determination. So when a Calvinist asks the question, why did you accept the gospel, but your friend did not? You can list influential factors in your decision, but it is a logical fallacy for them to assume that someone other than yourself determined your choice. This mystery of free will is not one that the Calvinists can really escape. Even R.C. Sproul, a well-known Calvinist, has said, but Adam and Eve were not created fallen. They had no sin nature. They were good creatures with a free will. Yet they chose to sin. Why? I don't know, nor have I found anyone yet who does know. What many Calvinists fail to realize is that Calvinism is actually the only system that teaches the believer is better or more capable than the one who refused to believe. Calvinistic scholar R.C. Sproul taught, at the heart of Reformed theology, this agnostic scholar capable.
Calvinism is the only system that teaches believer is better or more capable than the one who has refused to believe. That sounds like a straw man argument, Mr. Logical Fallacies. It sounds like now you've created a straw man argument. It suggests that they're better or more capable than the one who refused to believe. It suggests that God chose them. Anyway, I don't know. I'm not going to spend too much time on that, but it sounds kind of like a straw man.
Capable than the one who refused to believe. Calvinistic scholar R.C. Sproul taught, at the heart of Reformed theology, this axiom resounds: regeneration precedes faith. What that means is that someone is born again in order to believe. They're regenerated in order to have faith. Well, regenerated people are more capable or better than unregenerate people. So if the claims of Calvinism are true, the person who accepts the gospel does so because they have been made better. They have been regenerated or born again, and thus they have a capacity that their friend does not have. On provisionism, however, all people have the necessary insight and moral capacity to respond willingly to God's appeal. Thus, all are truly without excuse, because everyone has everything they need to believe in God. This is due to the fact that everyone is created as His image bearers in a world where His truth is made abundantly clear and believable. On provisionism, no one who remains enslaved can fall back on the excuse that God did not make them morally capable to respond positively to His own appeals to free them from their bondage, or insightful enough to understand and accept plainly spoken truth like they can on the Calvinistic system. The fall does not cause humanity to become morally incapable of accepting God's appeals to be reconciled from that fall. If it did, then what better excuse do unbelievers have than I was born incapable of responding to my own God?
I feel like that's a pretty good example of like not quoting the Bible very well. You're just quoting two words without excuse. You should probably put it into more context.
And his appeals to be reconciled. I was born unwanted by my Maker. I wasn't given the grace needed to come to him. And Jesus didn't in fact die for me. I can't think of a better excuse. And the Bible clearly teaches we are without excuse. In fact, there are some who use Reformed theology as an excuse for their unbelief. As an example, Derek Webb, the former lead singer for Caedmon's Call and listed in the top 50 of the most influential people in the gospel-centered movement of the Gospel Coalition, said this.
And with my Christian friends who try to convince me this, I say, listen, like, I don't know why you're trying to persuade me. Because your own Bible says
it's a gift.
That it's a gift. It's the work of the Spirit, start to finish. It's a removing of a heart of stone and replacing with a heart of flesh. That is not something you can do for me.
Yeah.
So if it's true, we're both depending on the Spirit to show up. I'm literally in the grave next to Lazarus, waiting to hear my name.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know what I want to say about this, man. It is that Calvinism has weird emphasis on things. Like what we, as evangelists, people who want to spread the gospel, we don't really need to worry about whether or not someone was chosen or whether or not someone is elect. Like, your job is to go spread the gospel, and the bottom line is that if the people that you evangelize to, they never come over to Christ, well, then they very well might have been reprobate. Like, this idea of elect versus reprobate, like, what is it that requires this emphasis on that topic? You know, when you're trying to reel in God's flock, you go out there and you preach and you try to save people, and if they are saved, well, what that means is that, you know, they very well might have been elect to be saved, and if they never come to Christ, then they very well might have been reprobate. But I guess my 2 cents is that the emphasis on that, it's very philosophical. I'm tempted to say it's just kind of edgy. You know, we just focus on trying to save people, you know, making sure that people have the opportunity to be saved. But yes, when it comes down to it and all is said and done, those who were not saved, they very well might have not been elect. They were reprobate. So it's very philosophical. Maybe overly so? I still struggle with this stuff.
And I'm going to lay in there dead till he shows up.
Yeah. Somebody asked me near the beginning of this year living Christian, well, what would it take for you to believe? What would it take for you to believe in God? Well, that's easy. God would have to give me faith because I can't reach out and grab it.
What it would take is a miracle.
It would take a miracle. Yeah, it would.
Like, what does it take for a dead man to come 6 feet out of the ground? It takes someone to dig him out, to open the box and revive him.
Breathe into his nostrils.
And the Bible makes it very clear that there is nothing less spiritual than that going on in salvation.
Absolute new life.
New life, from death to life.
Yeah.
And that's what would be required.
Yeah, and I'm
open to it. I'm literally in the grave waiting to hear my name.
Yeah, anytime.
If that's the picture.
Because if there is going to be a work of the Spirit going on, I want it.
And I won't be able to resist it. And I can't call out for it. I cannot coax him over.
Yeah.
Either my name is written in the book of life or it's not.
Yeah.
And I mean, so if we're going to really get into the language.
Yeah, see, this is like, what I see here is that this is a very philosophical thing. The elect and the reprobate. And it just, I'm tempted to say that this is like a question of philosophy, you know, of like determinism. And it's going to go over a lot of people's heads. And I think that this debate is very deep. Maybe I think it's deeper than other people. I made videos years ago where it's like, dude, it's so complex. Like, God's salvation is so complex and philosophical, and people would try to be like, it's really not that complex. But, this guy's trying to say, well, look at these guys using Calvinist theology as an excuse not to be Christians. I mean, I just feel like the philosophical discussion is going over their head, and that's what I feel happens a lot of times with this, and I feel like it happens to me, and I just feel like it's a bizarre emphasis.
The hard language of the Bible, provocative as it may be, like I got to a point. I don't like binary ideas or statements, but there's a few that feel emotionally like they are, although maybe they're not. But there's a point where I said, you know what? Maybe God made me and fashioned me for destruction.
Yeah, vessel for
because he says he does that.
Jacob I have loved, Esau I've hated, for the good pleasure of his own will.
That's right, and he receives no counsel but his own about that. And so there's nothing I'm going to be able to do to change his mind about it. So maybe it's all real and I'm just not chosen. And that's a thing I'm going to have.
I mean, this guy's just being cringe. It's like, yeah, wow, isn't that crazy, dude? Maybe you are fitted for destruction. Well, have fun getting destroyed. Like, whatever.
That's just a thing I'm going to have to reckon with. Yeah. And that's not a thing I can really do anything about.
Right, and it would seem unnatural and almost, it would seem shady to try to do something about it in a way, to try to strong arm a faith into oneself.
So I'm going to try to make the best of this.
Yeah.
And I'm listening.
Yeah. I
mean, in as far as Lazarus was listening the moment before he heard his name out of Jesus' mouth.
Yeah.
Which a dead man cannot.
Can't.
So he wasn't listening.
No.
He wasn't paying attention.
Yep.
He wasn't flagging someone down. He wasn't wishing or hoping for it.
He wasn't seeking.
He wasn't seeking it. He was just suddenly called out.
Yeah.
Came alive and came out, and that was the only response he could have had.
No choice.
And because he had no choice. I mean, that's a hard and biblical word.
Yeah.
And
that's the Christianity I resonate with.
Me too. Yeah. And so what's so funny is that all my friends call me like a reformed atheist because when I do pick up the language of Christianity and start to speak it again, it's a language I'm fluent in.
Oh yeah.
Just like you can still have the accent of a country in which you no longer live.
Yeah.
And you can still detect the accent on my speech. I go immediately into that reformed view, only because it's just the one that seemed to make the most logical sense to me.
It was very consistent.
It's the one that seemed...
Yeah, just trying to articulate my thoughts on this, and it's confusing. I feel like Calvinist churches are just kind of weird. Like, every single sermon needs to put emphasis on being elect. God has preordained us. The emphasis, that's really what I feel like it comes down for me. The emphasis on election, the emphasis on elect versus reprobate. I just think it's strange. It's kind of like cringe. Like, this guy is cringe. But also Calvinists with their emphasis on this is just kind of cringe. You should focus on spreading the gospel. And, people are either going to believe or they're not going to believe. And I just feel like this debate is irrelevant to it, and it rubs people the wrong way. We're elect. It feels good to be God's elect, and well, if you didn't get saved, then God has destined you for destruction. I feel like it's strange. It's a strange emphasis, so that's just what I feel I have to say about it.
Like, it made the most sense of the whole thing to me.
Maybe Reformed theology isn't as logically consistent or as biblical as you thought it was, Derek. Maybe God has given you the responsibility to believe and trust in Him. To help us spread the news of God's love and provision for all people, please visit Soteriology.
So my take was always, I always appeal to God having knowledge. God has all knowledge, so He knows whether or not you're going to be saved. Now, did He decide whether or not you're going to be saved? What I've heard some Calvinists say is that he saw who was going to be saved, and then He also elects them. I'm not gonna lie, man, I find it confusing. Do I believe in election? Yes, I think that God has a special view of those who are going to be saved, and I need to brush up on the verses regarding election, where it straight out says that God chose who is going to be saved and did it. So it's interesting. Yeah, my impression of Calvinism is that they put a strange emphasis on reprobate versus election. Okay, well, here's where I find myself right now, guys. I don't want to nitpick over how many people are watching. You know, I mean, I do leave the VODs up so people can watch after the fact. But we've gone a clean 2 hours and 15 minutes. I feel like we've kind of reached like a natural stopping point where I don't really know if I want to get into this right now. I know that I said I would, and we did go 2.5 hours last time, which isn't a bad podcast length. Maybe I can get through this a little bit. I almost feel like we should do a full-on emphasis on incels next time for the news segment, almost to where it's like there's a news segment, there's a religion segment, and then that's it. Like this third let's break down an article segment isn't necessarily necessary. Like maybe we should just do a focus on incel black pill next time and make this article a part of it. Let's read a little bit of it today, but I'm not going to spend much time on this today. Findings. Incels argue that social media and dating apps reveal and compound the gender practices that create incels. We identify 3 key themes in their arguments: hypergamy, dating apps, chads and Tinder, beta males, and Instagram. Incels depict women as commodities. Yeah, we went over that last time. By focusing on technology, incels support male domination and legitimate their misogynistic discourse. Hypergamy and dating apps. Incels argue that dating apps are a driving factor in producing men who are involuntary celibate. According to this logic, apps like Tinder, Bumble provide women with a large number of men for romantic sexual partnerships. Incels see women as inherently hypergamous, which means they use these apps to constantly trade up and obtain a more desirable mate. Incels claim that dating apps compound hypergamy, unfairly excluding average and below average men from romantic and sexual partnerships. Incels suggest that dating apps provide women with a large pool of potential mates. On these apps, users view one another's profile, swiping right on users they are interested in and swiping left on users they are not interested in. Outside of incel forums, many dating app users have shared their match statistics, which anecdotally show that women are more discerning than men. For instance, one male user reports making approximately 27,000 right swipes over a 4-year period, yielding 110 matches, matching with 0.4% of women he was interested in. In contrast, a female user reports that she made approximately 3,700 right swipes over 13 months, resulting in nearly 2,500 matches, matching with 68% of the men she was interested in. Wow. The man got 0.4% of what he was interested in, and she got 68% of what she was interested in. Woo! Incels use these statistics to advance arguments about hypergamy. I mean, wow. I mean, you look at those statistics, it's like, yeah, well, it does seem like women have quite a hefty advantage over men. I mean, what exactly do you have against that? Suggesting that men are lucky to obtain any matches, while any woman can select the best partner from any men. Ultimately, whatever you choose to do has been ordained from the foundation of the world. And if he chooses to not change because of a reformed loophole, he's exercised his agency and fulfilled God's will. Yeah, that's brutal statistics that it seems like they're just going to try to blow past. Incels argue that dating apps facilitate hypergamy because they create an environment wherein women do not select their looks match, which is an incel term for partnering with someone of comparable attractiveness. Incels claim that women use dating apps to date up by selecting men who are more physically attractive than they are. Thus, they argue women of average attractiveness can select men who are extremely attractive, rather than dating a man who is also of average attractiveness. Such mismatched selections can be identified because incels ubiquitously quantify physical attractiveness. Incels rate people from 1 to 10, where 1 is very unattractive and 10 is very attractive. Incels suggest that dating apps make it possible for a woman that is 5 to partner with men who are 9s and 10s. As one user states, I was often attracted to ugly girls around my looks match, but every one of them rejected me because they could find better using Tinder and shit like that. I was called ugly, even by girls way more ugly than me, like 2 out of 10 obese roasties. In addition to calling these women ugly and obese, he uses the term roasty. Okay, but I mean, you notice how this article, what they're doing is they've taken this quote, and now they're going to start focusing on how obscenely offensive he's being. But wait a minute now, these statistics that we're looking at and these opening points, it was a good point that average women are able to go for higher tier men, and it's pretty crazy statistics. This 68% success for women, 0.4% for men. Are you going to address that? Like, why don't those statistics suggest hypergamy? Why isn't it a good point that women can choose above their looks match? Like, you're not really addressing that, and now you're just gonna start attacking, like, oh my gosh, he said roasty. Oh my gosh, look at this incel, the way he talks. While incels focus primarily on hypergamy relative to physical attractiveness, they also argue that dating apps compound status-based hypergamy. Incels claim that women who they deem to be average or below average attractiveness are able to partner with men who
Wolfgang
are both
has just
attractive
donated
and sexually
$3.
successful.
Watch channel MGTOW chats for based content.
Thank you.
You
for
should
the
join their
dono,
podcast, big guy.
Mr. RJ. Okay. I'm gonna go ahead and take a look at that dono, see if I missed any other donos. I feel like tomorrow I should see what the latest is on incels, manosphere. Like, tomorrow maybe would be a good time to cover manosphere stuff, and then throw that article in there and squeeze as much of that as I can. You know, at least for now, I feel like just a dual format. You know, we got the little opening. I can just kind of take my time in the opening, say a couple of things, maybe make time to pull up a couple of things that people mentioned, do the news segment, and then do the religious segment. That really feels like it just kind of fills out the show for me. I mean, I could experiment with some different formats in different shows. I want to get some more introduction tracks. I want to have like a exit track and like a little soundbite, maybe with some music that I play before the news segment starts, soundbite before the religious segment starts. But anyway, I'm gonna go ahead and take a look over here at Streamlabs. Watch channel MGTOW Chats for based content. You should join their podcast, big guy. MGTOW Chats. I will check it out. I will check that out, good sir. No, I'm not taking calls right now. I think the best I could consider is set up interviews beforehand. But I just think it's risky to take calls. I don't know who's gonna show up. It opens up opportunities for trolling, and I'm about spent, guys. That we're just about to 2.5 hours. I feel like we had a pretty dense. I feel like the show is already, you know, it's been a show, baby. It's been a show. This third segment, like going deep into an article. I just feel like the article should be covered in the news portion. So far, I like the format: intro, news, theology. But I'll experiment with more formats in the future. We'll keep evolving and adjusting as we go. If you guys have any final thoughts, you can go ahead and speak them now. And while I'm waiting for those final thoughts, let's go ahead and pull up the telescope picture that everybody's talking about. What's it called? The Webb telescope? Webb telescope. 3 hours ago. Here we go. Let's watch this NBC News clip. Boom.
America is defined by one single word. Possibilities. Possibilities.
Imagine all the possibilities. America is defined by that? Yikes. Wow, that is just so 5 IQ. That is just like so... I feel like tons of people should be mad about that. Really? America is just defined by possibilities? That's cringe.
I want to thank the team at NASA for once again showing that that's who we are. That's who we are as a nation of possibilities. And now let's take a look at the very first image from this miraculous...
That's not even in line with libertarianism. That's not even in line with the Constitution. It's like, well, what, the possibilities of communism, the possibilities of an uprising and overthrow, possibility of totalitarianism, possibility that we get our rights and freedoms taken away. Like, I don't know about... Everybody should have a problem with him saying that, dude. That's cringe. Cringe.
Telescope.
Let's go! Oh, it's over, dude. Well, can't argue with that. Oh, wow, bro. What the hell? I believe in Harlem Globetrotters universe now. Bunch of floating basketballs. I don't know what I'm talking about.
NASA Administrator Nelson, I'm going to turn this over to you. So will you please tell us about what we're seeing?
Mr. President, if you held a grain of sand on the tip of your finger at arm's length, that is the...
This looks like This looks like a playroom, dude. You guys ever been somewhere? There's this place growing up here. There was a place called Foreign Affairs. And they had this, like, playroom area. It was so awesome, man. You could crawl through all these tunnels, and there's weird little, like, diorama displays. And then there was a space room. You go in the back, and there's, like, all these stars up. Like, whoa, cool space room. You could book it for birthday parties and stuff. It looks like this, dude. This looks like a freaking place space room.
Part of the universe that you're seeing. Just
Whoa.
One little speck of the universe. And what you're seeing there are galaxies. You're seeing galaxies that are shining around other galaxies whose light has been bent. And you're seeing just a small little portion of the universe.
How will Christians ever recover? Well, I think that this could easily be created without looking at space through a telescope.
You know, 100 years ago, Mr. President, Madam Vice President, 100 years ago, we thought there was only one galaxy. Now, the number is unlimited. And in our galaxy, we have billions of stars or suns. And there are...
I mean, people want to talk about, like, how do Christians have faith? It's unscientific. You don't believe in science. You guys have faith in something you can't prove. But you're asking me to look at this picture and say, wow, like, now we know that we used to believe in one galaxy. Now we know that there's millions of billions of galaxies. It's like, you have faith that these people aren't lying to you. And I don't.
Billions of galaxies with billions of stars and suns. And we're getting our first glimpse.
I'm sorry. I have to destroy your religion with logic and facts.
As you said, Mr. President, we're looking back more than 13 billion years. Light travels at 186,000 miles per second. And that light that you're seeing on one of those little specks has been traveling for over 13 billion years. And by the way, we're going back further because this is just the first image. They're going back about 13.5 billion years. And since we know the universe is 13.8 billion years old, we're going back almost to the beginning.
It's a picture that looks like a kid's playroom star space section. It's, yeah. Yep. And they admit that they Photoshop everything. True. By golly, I think that was a podcast. Yeah, guys, you know, the incel article, I will recycle it into another topic. But I'm just kind of like trying to feel this natural pace. I can see that the news section could go longer. Like sometimes the news section goes longer. We could spend more time on the theology section. I just feel like those two sections right there, that could make the whole podcast. But I'm still thinking about formats, still thinking about ways to spice things up. But, yeah. I think we're hood for today, guys. Thank you for the $3 dono. My buddy, my friend, RJ. And I feel like I want to go make a little trip to a certain golden arched place that serves burgers and treats to celebrate a day of a hard man doing a hard podcast. Yeah, right. The black hole picture that looked like a donut. Donuts. Black holes. Well, my friends, join the Discord if you would like. I am on Instagram, Reform Stoic. You can email me, perennialstoic@gmail.com. Another podcast, boyos. We will be back tomorrow at the same time. And I wanted to make an announcement. I will go ahead and announce it right now, but I will officially announce it tomorrow at the beginning of the podcast. We're doing a meme competition. Let's go. It's going to go for... Let's go ahead and run it for like a week or two. Maybe 2 weeks. I'll think about how long I want to run it, but we're going to do a meme competition. I think I need to give you guys some time to make some memes. Maybe we'll do like the whole month, but anybody who wants to enter a Stoic meme into the competition, the lucky winner, oh man, you might win like your name, like you'll get acknowledged, or like $10 or like a coupon to buy one get one free milk at Safeway. You're gonna win something, baby. It is gonna be good. So open to memes in the Discord, post your Stoic memes. I think we should make like a section for memes. We'll make a Stoic meme section in the Discord. Post your memes. They will be seen on the segment. We'll have like a meme day, or I'll have a day when we look at all the memes. And yeah, meme competition. Let's go. We'll just see what happens, dude. More or less, like, I'm encouraging people to make memes. God bless you guys. It's been a great day, and I will see you tomorrow. God bless you, my friends. I will get some epic ending music, and it's going to be dope. It's going to be dope. Thank you for being here, guys. God bless.